As unbelievable as it is, we are 1 week away from Avengers Infinity War, and I've spent the last 2 months watching all 18 films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to Infinity War and leading up to doing this video. I'm going to rank all 18 films from my least favourite to my favourite. And that means that this is going to be a pretty long video, so if you stick around to the very end, you're awesome. But without further ado, let's tackle it. Let's rank the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Starting out at number 18, my personal least favourite MCU film. I might be in the minority on this one, but it's actually The Incredible Hulk. I didn't find the story to be all that interesting or compelling. I didn't find the characters to be that interesting or compelling, especially Betty Ross. Oh my god, she is one of the worst love interests I've ever seen in a superhero film, or maybe even a film in general. I just couldn't stand her. It had some cool action scenes of the Hulk hulking out and destroying stuff, doing the whole Hulk smash stuff, but a lot of the CGI really didn't hold up, and I just couldn't really get into the story or the characters, like I said. Not a terrible film, but my personal least favourite MCU film of them all. Number 17 is a film that a lot of people do consider to be one of, if not the worst MCU film, and that is Iron Man 2. Robert Downey Jr. is great as Tony Stark as he always is. All the cast is really good, but Iron Man 2 suffers from an overabundance of story arcs and characters, making the film feel very choppy and very cluttered, and the villain, Ivan, whatever his name is, Mickey Rourke, not very good villain at all, I'm afraid. But Robert Downey Jr., the cast and the action scenes make it very, very watchable, and again, not a terrible film, but one of my least favourite MCU films, and it's number 17. Another film that's widely considered one of the worst MCU films, and that is Thor: The Dark World. Again, Thor: The Dark World is not a terrible film. I don't think Marvel has made a terrible film that's like really awful. Just these ones at the bottom are obviously their least best ones, in my opinion. Thor: The Dark World is a decent superhero film. It's got some really cool action scenes, really good special effects. Chris Hemsworth as Thor, always good. But I think Thor: The Dark World is probably Marvel's most generic and conventional film, in the sense that it's just typical good guys, bad guys, 101, and it doesn't go beyond making it more than just typical good guys and bad guys. And Malekith, in my opinion, is the worst MCU villain of them all. So forgettable, so generic, and just cardboard cutout sci-fi villain who just wants to destroy the universe because why not? Next up is a film that when I rewatched it for this MCU rewatch, I actually liked it a bit less than I used to, and that's Captain America the First Avenger. I love the retro feel of this film, it being set in World War II. I love the action scenes in this film whenever they don't montage through them. Captain America is an insanely likeable hero, and it does a really good job at setting up the hero for future Captain America and Avengers films. But for me, the film was bogged down in the pacing in the first half. The CGI really didn't hold up for me, and I actually didn't think Red Skull was all that great of a villain. Hugo Weaving was great as the Red Skull, and he brings it to life in a really menacing way, but as a villain, he's just, you know, another villain who just wants to destroy everything because villains and stuff. I used to really like this film and thought it was one of the underrated MCU films, but rewatching it, I thought it was decent, and that's why a rewatch is always worth it, to get a definitive opinion on a film, and I think Captain America the First Avenger is a decent 3 out of 5 film for me. Next up is the first Thor. Now this is a film that I used to think was decent. I was like, yeah, it's decent, but one of my least favourite MCU films. But when I rewatched it for this rewatch, I still think it's a good film, not amazing, but I appreciated it this time for the character development of Thor. He's an arrogant king in Asgard, he's really cocky, comes back from battle, he's all like being a rock star about it, so he gets banished to Earth, loses all of his powers, and I just like seeing him become a better version of himself. We see that with a couple of heroes in the MCU, and I liked how they did it with Thor in this one. Number 13 is another film that a lot of people hate and bash on for kind of an understandable reason, I think. That's Iron Man 3. Everybody despises the Mandarin twist of this film, and I understand that if it's like a comic book character that everybody loves and they just throw it out the window. I don't have that comic attachment because I haven't read the comic books, but even watching this film just as a casual moviegoer, I was a little bit confused as to why they would waste such a potentially menacing character that they show in the trailers and such an amazing actor with Ben Kingsley on just such a stupid, like, goofy British actor who pretends to be the Mandarin. The twist did make sense for the story in the sense that Aldrich Killian wanted a face for his bombing, so pin it on this guy so he gets away with it. That does make sense, and that's something that would actually happen, but it still doesn't change the fact that they wasted a potentially awesome and memorable villain with Ben Kingsley and the Mandarin. But apart from the Mandarin stuff, I actually liked how Iron Man 3 focused on Tony Stark, the man, and not necessarily as Iron Man, and it highlighted how his brain is his greatest weapon, and it shows what I liked about the first Iron Iron Man, him like collecting scraps and building stuff and becoming a hero by just using his intellect. That's what I really liked about Iron Man 3. Number 12 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Volume 2 was not as good as Volume 1 as I expected, but I liked how this film did much more for the characters this time round. You get to learn a little bit more about them and their past and how their past events shaped who they are today. The first one set them up as these really awesome characters with really great funny moments and them being real badass characters, but the second film did more for them this time round as characters, and I liked how it touched on the family dynamic. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 really is kind of a family sitcom slash kind of dramedy. I really like that about Volume 2, plus the soundtrack is not as forgettable as I thought it was. There's a couple of tracks on there that I now listen to a few times after watching it the other day, and Yondu's death was actually pretty impactful because Yondu's awesome, and I love that dynamic of him actually being Peter's daddy but not his father, and his funeral where he goes out into the stars is really spectacular with that father and son song playing in the background. Again, not as good as the first one, but I think it's a very solid follow-up. Number 11 is a film that I think a lot of people have higher up on their MCU rankings, so you might be surprised that it's this low on the list, and that's the first Iron Man. Iron Man 1 is a very good origin story, really good superhero film, and it shows how Tony Stark again uses his brain to get out of situations, him becoming a better version of himself. I love seeing all that stuff, but I guess I just don't love the hell out of this film like most people do, so that's why it's number 11. I just like a lot of other Marvel films more than Iron Man, but it was a really good start off to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that is for sure. Here we go, now we get into the top 10 MCU films for me, and number 10 is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, like Iron Man, is a really good origin story of a guy becoming a better version of himself, but I love Doctor Strange a little bit more than Iron Man because it's magic, and I love the sorcery of Doctor Strange, I love the world building of Doctor Strange, I love all the sorcery, comatage, magicians, magic and all that kind of, I just love all that world building. It was really interesting to me, and the way they bend reality in this film, using it for the fight scenes and the chase scenes, it led to some really spectacular stuff. There's some of the best visual effects I've ever seen in a film in Doctor Strange. I cannot wait to see more sorcerer badassery in future Marvel films. Number 9 is another film that a lot of people kind of bash on nowadays, but I actually really enjoy Avengers Age of Ultron. Yes, it wasn't as good as the first Avengers film, but I still thought it was a solid follow-up. It gave us a good reason for the Avengers to come back to fight Ultron, and like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I thought Avengers 2 did a good job at doing more for the characters this time around, because the first film brought them all together in awesome and badass ways, but the second film delved into the characters a little bit more, especially Hawkeye. And the finale of this film, where the city's going into the sky and they're fighting all the Ultron bots, is all sorts of spectacular. That's one of my favourite third acts in any MCU film actually. People bash on it, but I really enjoy Age of Ultron, and it gets number 9 on my ranking. Next up is Ant-Man. Now this is a film that I forget how enjoyable this film actually is. I watched it just last week in this MCU rewatch, and I just had a ball watching it. I was like, wow, this film's just so much fun. The villain Darren Cross does hold it back from greatness, pretty bad villain actually, but I just love the heist element of this film, I love the small scale of this film, and I loved the shrinking scenes. They were just so great and so creative as well, especially the last fight where Ant-Man and Yellowjacket are fighting on the Thomas the Tank Engine train set. Ant-Man is a ton of fun and another one of my favourite MCU origin stories. Number 7 is the film that I watched last night to conclude my MCU rewatch, and that is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok to me is easily the best Thor film. Does it go against what Thor was in the first two films? A little bit in terms of the tone and the colour palette, but I thought it was all the better for it, because Thor Ragnarok, unlike the first two films, for the most part, was really fun and really entertaining. And who doesn't get the Immigrant song stuck in their head every time they watch this film? I mean, seriously, that was just the perfect song choice, especially for that final battle where he's getting all lightning fired and just destroying everything. Badass. Number 6 is a film that I'm actually not sure where people are going to put this in their rankings, but I just love the hell out of Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming to me is the best Spider-Man film that's been made so far. I know how unpopular that's going to be, but I'm going to stick to it. I love the high school aspect of this film, I love the coming of age aspect of this film, that makes it one of Marvel's most unique films, and I liked the new take on Spider-Man with him being in a world full of superheroes, so he has to prove himself being worthy of Avengers material. Add in the awesome action sequences and a really great villain in Vulture, and you've got, in my opinion, one of the best MCU films. Getting into that nitty gritty now, the top 5, and at number 5 for me is The Avengers. The culmination of phase 1 of the MCU, the first time that all these heroes getting together, and Joss Whedon did a great job of bringing all these heroes and all these tones together and making it feel coherent but also really entertaining. To me, The Avengers is everything that a big budget superhero blockbuster should be. It has the good characters, the good character moments, but it's also really fun and entertaining in the process. And the Battle of New York, just like the Sokovia battle in Avengers Avengers 2 is one of my favourite third acts of any Marvel film, just because of how purely entertaining it actually is. Number 4 used to be number 5, but after thinking about it I bumped it to number 4, and that is Black Panther. Black Panther is one of the strongest MCU films from a narrative and character perspective. It's such an involving character study of family and culture. The Wakandan culture is just so resonating, the spirituality of this place is just so fascinating to just get into with the music. I still listen to the music of Black Panther, and I just think about Wakanda and the world building, and it just resonates with me so much. And you've got that really involving story of Killmonger coming to Wakanda and creating that conflict of what they should do, and you really understand both perspectives on it, and that's why Killmonger is, I think, one of the best MCU villains. I love Black Panther, and it gets number 4. Number 3, I think, in terms of pure entertainment value, is the most entertaining MCU film of them all. You probably know what it is. It's Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 brings these characters together and gets you to care about them, but also just love them as complete badass, awesome characters. Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Groot, Rocket, all these characters coming together, and you just latch onto them instantly, and you want to see them again as soon as this film's over. Plus the amazing soundtrack, which I think is one of the best soundtracks ever put in a film. The awesome space adventure. Guardians of the Galaxy, like I said, is in my opinion probably the most flat-out entertaining MCU film of them all, and it gets number 3. Now we get to a top 2, and you can tell what they are already because I haven't mentioned them, but number 2 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This film is one of the great examples of why Marvel is so good at mixing it up with their subgenres. They can do a heist film like Ant-Man, then a space adventure with Guardians of the Galaxy, then a coming-of-age high school film with Spider-Man Homecoming, and then they can do a family culture study with Black Panther, and then with Captain America: The Winter Soldier, they do a conspiracy spy thriller. The story of this film is so interesting with the conspiracy of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even like all these films later, I still find the story so fascinating and so involving, and I love how grounded and gritty this film feels compared to the big spectacle films like the Avengers and the Guardians films, which I still love, but I just love how this film just felt so real. The Russo brothers did an amazing job with Winter Soldier. It gets number 2. But the Russo brothers did an even better job with number 1, which is obviously Captain America: Civil War. Civil War gives us yet another involving narrative in the form of the Avengers splitting apart over the Sokovia Accords, and you really see both sides of it, and that's what I really love. Even though it's a Captain America film and he's the main character, you do see all the perspectives of the individual characters and the two sides of the Avengers, and that's what makes the story so interesting. And it puts the heroes under a microscope, and it shows that how their big battles and saving all their lives actually does ruin a lot of lives as well, and that's really hit home with the villain Zemo. Plus the film introduced Spider-Man and Black Panther in really awesome ways that added to the story, and the airport battle is just one of the greatest action scenes, battle scenes that I've ever seen in a superhero film, that I've ever seen in a film in general. I can't see myself ever watching the action scenes in this film without just the biggest dumb grin on my face because of how well done they actually are, like the airport battle, but also that stairway fight where Steve and Bucky are going down just beating up all the SWAT teams. That is just badass. I absolutely adore Captain America: Civil War, and as of right now it is my personal favourite film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oh, there we go. All 18 MCU films done and ranked. It's been a great journey, a couple of bumps in the road here and there, but it's been a really great journey. But now we've got the destinations to look forward to. Avengers: Infinity War. Stay tuned next Thursday for my thoughts on Avengers: Infinity War. I can't wait. Check out my last video I did, the top 5 MCU villains. But also tell me in the comments below, how would you rank the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all 18 films, or top 5 if you can't be bothered listing all 18 films. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you've stuck around to the very end, I just commend you so much. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more of my stuff, click on one of these, and I'll see you all in the next video.